taking the 3D stuff and making it unfold. So the biggest thing with this is I'm making a new composition. That's not the big thing. That's the same thing we've done before. I'm dealing with a solid. I'm picking a flat color. And what I want to do is I essentially want to unfold this thing. So like the original one, it was brought in from Illustrator, right? We had those 4 cards or 5 cards, and then they all kind of swing. What we want to do is we want to create one composition that we could cut up into a bunch of pieces, and then using all those pieces, we can have it unfold. And if you go to YouTube and you look up videos, there's a bunch of cool things you can do with 3D apart from this. When we do our Angry Bird stuff, we do our character scorecard thing, you'll see some more 3D stuff that you can do. But this is just one thing that I think that it's like all over the place. So if I went in here and I started cutting this thing up, what's going to happen is I have this composition or this solid here, and that solid is essentially locked to whatever that solid is. So what I want to do is I want to put this solid into a composition. That way I could animate anything inside the composition and everything will update. Okay. So if I were to right click and go to pre-compose and just call this animated comp. Okay, so now I have a composition that is this. So whatever I put on here will show up in the other one. I am. My microphone's on this now. So if I go back to this comp, you can see that it's solid green. I go here, it's still solid green. Now, to make things a little bit easier to see what's happening so I don't accidentally mess stuff up, I like to put a gradient on here. So I'm going to put a 4-color gradient, and then I could also duplicate the layer. Oops. Duplicate the layer. And then on the top layer, I could generate a checkerboard. And maybe make that a bit bigger. Okay. Now, the only reason I'm doing this is because as I start to cut stuff up inside my other view, I want to see if I accidentally move it and it becomes misaligned. That's the only reason, okay? So I'm going to jump back to my regular comp, and you'll see that this comp is basically, again, just a flattened out version of what we were just looking at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my grid on, and I'm going to take the opacity down on this just so we can see this a bit better. And I'm also going to go to my preferences, go to my grids, and maybe change the color instead of this green color. Maybe I'll make this black so it's easier to see. I changed my grid lines to 120 and my subdivisions to 1. Okay. I could also, I think, yeah, if I set this to 8 and 6, that's fine. Okay. So I picked 120 because this divides evenly across, and then on the bottom here we'll have some that go off screen, but that's no big deal. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to cut this up. I want to have basically every single one of these boxes is a brand new layer. Okay. Now if I go to this here and I start to draw the shape, you'll see how it cuts out that shape right there. I need this to be 100% accurate. If I do this, it's not accurate. It's like hanging off the comp area. So I need to get it lined up right. So I'm going to go to my view and snap to the grid. So now this is going to be an easy process of just doing that. So you see how I just snapped here to the corner and then here to the grid. So that's exactly what I need. Now I need every single one of those boxes to be a different layer. So I could, after I've created one box, I could go and duplicate this and then just move the mask over. It's actually more work than just duplicating all the layers initially and then just outlining each one. So I'm going to undo it. If I use my math skills, I can just figure out how many are going here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are going across. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are going down. 8 times 5 is 40. So I just need 40 layers. So here's a quick way to do that. You can duplicate this 10 times, and then you grab those 10 and you duplicate that 4 times. That gives me 40. Perfect. Okay. So the order doesn't matter right now. So I'm just going to grab these and just outline the first one. go to the next one, outline the next one. And I am making sure that they snap. If I accidentally click here and it snaps off, then I undo it and I draw it again. Okay, now you're not going to really see anything happen, and it may be confusing if you're not paying attention to which one you just did. So make sure you're aware of, what was the last one you just drew on, so you don't draw the mask on the same one 10 times. And if it helps you, you can turn off the ones you've already done. In this case, it's really not going to help us because just underneath is all the other layers. So never mind about that. So the last one I drew is that one. Then I go to this one. Okay, I go down to the next one. And this is where drawing the mask could have, maybe been a little bit easier because we could have duplicated all those layers and then just offset all the masks at once, maybe. Oops, that one's off. And this process will obviously take you some time, especially if you forget, just like I did. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to have to animate each one of these boxes separately. Now there is plugins or scripts and different things that you could download. There's a website called AE Scripts, and what they do is they have a bunch of plugins that you can use for aligning things, different ways you could animate stuff. There's other ones that are free on the site. There are ones you have to pay for. So not terribly exciting, but definitely not too difficult. Now, by the time we get to the very end one, we'll see that our opacity is then working for us. Because right now we have the opacity down, but we're seeing all the layers. We're seeing all the layers stacked on top of each other. So once we get to the very end, then we'll see that the opacity is kicked in, and now we can actually see only 50% of each one. All right, now when we get down here, watch this. It snaps right to here, but then it also realizes how big the entire thing is, and it'll still snap like past it, okay? So you want to actually, down here, go past it and snap so that they're all still square. Because that way it'll still give us the appearance that when these things are unfolding, that they're not like cut in half, that they actually do exist fully. And then what's neat about this being in 3D is that once we're done, we could actually tweak the shape further. So we could actually grab everything once we're done and move the entire canvas around if we needed to because it's a 3D object. And you'll see as I'm going that this keeps fading every time I kind of click one. And then this very last one, I'll draw my shape. There you go. So you'll see how it faded now because my opacity was lower. So now that they're hidden, we can't see it. Now you tell me? Which one? Oh, that one. Yep. Thank you. So I can hit M for mask, click that, and then just delete it, and then go back to my mask. And draw that again. Thank you. All right. So that is the masking part of this, okay? So not terribly difficult, but obviously not super fun. So now what we're going to do is we're going to unfold this thing. So starting from wherever you want to start from, you're going to kind of figure out a path of how you want this thing to unfold. So in the example one that I showed, I started off with these 4 right here, but I could start off with just one, thinking about this in a way where that one would just like unfold, and then off of that one, another one would unfold, and off of that one, another one would unfold, and so on. So you want to try to think about how you want this thing to unfold. What we're going to do is mentally we just kind of pick like where we want to start. So I'm going to start, let's say, in the top left. And I'll say I'm going to have this one fold in from the left side. So I need to hit Y to get to my pivot tool. and then I need to move my pivot. The pivot will be down here, so I just need to snap it all the way over there. Because grid snap is still on, you'll see that it's still snapping to the grid. So we don't have to hold down control to snap it to anything because it'll automatically do that. So I'm going to have this snap rotate in from, I'll just put it up here in the corner. When your pivot's in a corner like that, you really have two options. You can rotate it like this, right? Because the pivot's up here in the corner, so it'll go that way, or it'll go this way. So you actually have two alternatives. If it's in the center, it's either going to rotate like this, or it's going to rotate like that. Obviously, that doesn't make sense. So we have to have it like in the corner to have the most flexibility. So this is my first one. Now I'm going to go to the second one and say, where do I want this one to pivot from? So this one folds out, then I want this one to come in from this side. Okay, so one folds out, the other one's going to fold out from there. And then from here, let's say I want this one to fold out. So now this one's going to be up there. And then after this one unfolds, then this one will fold out from that. Okay, now before I go and do the rest of this, I want you to see what we're going to do with this. So I'm going to go to this one, and I see that that is my very first layer. I'm going to go to this one, that's my second layer. I'm going to go to this one. This layer is all the way down here. In order to keep some of my sanity, it helps to keep these things in kind of order of how they're going to be coming out. So I'm going to take this one up to number 3. That way I know that this is going to be the first one that unfolds. This is the second. This is the third. I click this one. This is going to be the 4th. Okay. So now I'm just going to animate each one. So I'm not going to animate yet. I'm going to parent them. Okay. So if I just rotate this, everything has to be 3D. That's part of the assignment, right? Everything 3D. So if I go to number 4 and I rotate this in the Y direction here, you'll see how it just goes like behind it. That's what we want, okay? But in order for these things to feel like they're attached to each other so that when one unfolds and then the other one unfolds, that they feel like they're together, they have to be parented, just like I did with the signs to get them to feel like they're moving together. So I'm going to parent this to the one that they come off of. So number 4 comes out of 3, so I parent it to 3. Number 3 comes out of 2, so I parent it to 2. Number 2 comes out of 1, so I parent it to 1. Number 1 is my first one. It doesn't get parented to anything, so he just stays where he is. All right, so now when I go and rotate this, you'll see how it rotates the same. But now if I go to the next one and rotate it, you'll see how this one actually rotates both of these items. Okay, and if I rotate it the correct way, I can actually tuck it up like this. All right, so imagine that this is like some really intricate map, you know how hard those are to fold, and then you have to unfold this thing. So we're going to start off with this thing folded one at a time, and I'm going to pick the direction. So right now it's going inward, which is what you typically want it to do, is like go into the object, and I'm going to set a keyframe. I'm going to go up to like 20 frames. You don't want this to take forever to do, and then I'll just reset that back to 0. Okay. So he just goes like this, like that. Then I'm going to go to my next one, and I'm going to figure out which direction he's going to rotate in. If I look at the arrows here, I can see the red, the green, and the blue. Red is X, green is Y, and then blue is Z. RGB, XYZ. That's how you can remember those. Okay. So the red is the direction I'm going to rotate it in, so that should be this one. So I give it a little test. Yep, that's it. I'll set its starting point here. I'll just move that back. And I'll set its ending point at 0. Okay? So now we get this. I think that one here could probably just tuck in a bit more. There we go. There we go. So you see how it's unfolding. Perfect. Now I'm going to go to the next one. I go to this one. I go to rotate. This one, I'm going to rotate it from the green direction, which is the Y. So I'm going to set a keyframe here, go back to the beginning, and then rotate it so that it's tucked into that area. Go back to the very first one, set a keyframe in the, this one I can actually do Y and X, just because it's kind of in the corner. And I'll just rotate it out of view this way, and out of view. Oops, it wasn't X, it was Z. Yeah. And rotate it out of view that way. Okay, so now if we look at this, it's going to do this. So it just kind of like folds in like this. Okay, now that's not very impressive. Now what was in the sine one, if you got to that part yet, do you remember what I did to make it look a little bit more natural looking? Easy ease is something I could definitely do, so let's do that real quick. And remember, we don't need anything fancy with this, just regular easy ease is good. Okay, what else did I do? Offset the layers, right? So the first layer should come first, second layer should come second, so we just scoot that over a little bit. Third layer will come, you guessed it, third, and fourth layer will come, you guessed it, fourth. Okay, so now you'll see how it's unfolding, it's kind of coming into position and doing that. Now to make it a little bit more realistic, let's just stretch these out even further. Okay, so basically at frame 20, that's where I set my keyframe. That's when that one is in position, or fully in position. So if I pull this almost to that point, and then I go up a bit further, let's see about there, and I pull these two almost to that point, and then that one a little bit further. What's going to happen now is it's going to give it the feeling of unfolding. Okay, so this is the same process we're going to do across the rest of that. You don't need to see me do the rest of it, but I just want to show where we would go from here, and then you can get the idea. Okay, so I'm going to reset where these are positioned just by using my left bracket, and that puts everything back where it was. And then I'm going to go to layer 5. Now here on layer 5, it has to come off of something that it was just touching. I can't have it come off of nothing, right? I can't have it come off of this one. That wouldn't make sense. So it would come off of that one because that one already came onto the screen. So this one here, I'm going to hit Y and move the pivot. And it snaps it there. And 5 is going to be parented to the one it comes off of. So it comes off of layer 2. So I go to 5. I say you're parented to number 2. I go to rotate, Y direction, back, and then just tuck it in. Okay. Now you typically don't want to do these like one at a time. It's kind of confusing to do them one at a time. It definitely helps to go through and lay it out of how you want it to happen, and then go through and parent stuff or animate stuff, and then go through and parent things. It definitely makes things a lot easier to do it that way. Okay, if you need to see what it looks like without them being parented, just unparent it. Okay, but make sure you do it at a good spot. Okay, and what I mean by that is, let's say right now I parented this back to layer 2. Because he is right here where I parented him, his animation is now going to go crazy. Okay, so I have to make sure that I parent him when everything is back to being here. And then everything will work good. Okay, so then I would go to my next one. Let's say off of this one, I go to this one, and that's going to be parented to that one. Okay, so this will be parented to the one above it, which is that. I move my pivot right here. I go to my rotates. I set my Y, I go back a little bit, and then I just reset this. Okay, and then everything comes in there. So however you want to do your path is up to you. Let me save this as test. I'll show you the path on my other one just so you can get an idea of how I did that one. That's not it. Okay, so you can see all the direction that this one went in, and you can see how staggered these are. Okay, once you get to this point, you're doing the same kind of thing of when does the one before it come out, and then that next layer has to be offset a little bit. This is usually one of the more confusing ones, so I want to make sure I gave it to you now so that you had time to kind of mentally work through it, because it is confusing as to like which layer should be parented to what, and then where's the offset. Once you have everything parented, So everything's like this, and you can parent it, and it's nice and neat. Then it's just a matter of changing where they're offset to make it look more appealing. Because right now, if I didn't like where this one was, let's say that one there, I can go down to where he is and just offset these even further. Okay, or I could, push them closer. And you'll really get a good idea of what's happening when you start playing with these. So here is map, the layer 28 right here is parented to 27. 27 is parented to 26. 26 is parented to 20, which is up there. Okay, so you'll see that each one of these kind of come in a specific order. These three should actually be a little bit further over anyway. Now it did take some time to play with this because at one point I was getting stuff where like random pieces were just popping into position before I wanted them to. So I'd have to offset them so they popped in kind of a hidden spot. So like right here, if these were too close, like that, then you'll see how they just kind of like pop into frame right there. And I really didn't want them to pop into frame right there or that one. You see that one popping into frame? So I just went through and I said, okay, that's not something I want. So I just offset them further. And then once you have this is what I was talking about before, we could create that camera. One node camera, yes. Hit C to go into our camera. They really need better controls in their camera inside the software. And now you can see how this thing can unfold in actual like 3-ish D, right? And then just like we did in the other one, that's not it. We can create lights. Enough. And the lights will add a little bit of shading to our stuff, so it'll appear a little bit more 3D, a little bit more realistic looking. And then what's cool about this setup is that we could actually take this comp and put it into another comp and have this thing still be 3D and have other comps that are all doing this kind of 3D thing and have our viewer like travel from one comp to the other comp using our camera. Like we could zoom through, right camera tool, zoom through these so that we basically like look at this one like this, and then we swipe over and then we can see another comp like way over here. So there's lots of cool stuff that we can do with these 3D layers. All right. So once you get done with that 3D sign flipping one, just as your practice one, make sure you understand obviously what we're doing in there, and then you can start working on this one, just cutting it up. And then next week I'll have the artwork for the background because the background is simply just, this is my starting point of it. The background is simply just images from Illustrator that we could then go through and animate here. And as we animate them here, this go up there. And then we come back to our comp. You'll see that our composition is going to have our boat. I lied. Why aren't you moving, boat? Oh, I put it on the wrong comp, that's why. There's my boat. There's my position and rotation. And I'm just going to squeeze these down a little bit further, like that. There we go. So now, I lied again. Where is this coming from? Map 1. Map 1. He's moving. Oh, I'm not far enough along. Yep, I really went too far on that one. Let's back to that. And for some reason, he's doing that, which is weird. I'll have to look at that and see why he's doing it. Oh, I know why he's doing it. Never mind. That's something else we'll have to fix after, too. All right, so then you'll go into, you'll have the artwork. You'll be able to animate your map doing whatever you want to do. If you want to create your own map or your own animation of what's happening here, you definitely could do that. It's just going to be something simple, just kind of like a couple items moving along, just to show that we have this 3D stuff moving around on this flat plane. Okay? Any questions? All right. I'll save this to